Hi, it's Angela with Blessed Life with Children. Um, so I've been thinking a lot about this lately because over the last 2 months I've gone through probably the hardest time in my entire life. And no, I wasn't actually experiencing any physical thing that would have made it hard. My dog's right here. Um, but emotionally, I was not handling stuff that I may have handled better in a different time in my life. And I went through one of the darkest moments. There was a lot of big things going on. For one, we were selling our house and we were trying to build a new house over there. Our house is now sold. We have not yet broken ground on the house next door. But there were just a lot of things that were going on that caused me anxiety. And then there were things that, are not needed to share with the public that were going on. Nothing big, but to me they were big. And I just was having trouble dealing with it. Plus, we had this idea of starting the IVF, which brought out a lot of my old feelings with infertility. And so a lot of that stuff crossed my mind, a lot of the losses and the idea of pending losses. I often would struggle with a fear of losing my daughters or losing my husband. I really have a lot of fear. And over the last week, I feel like I've had an epiphany. It started with my friend Ruth. Hi, Ruth. Hopefully you listen to this. My other dog. My friend Ruth actually said something to me because I was worried about, I found out I was pregnant. And it's very new. I'm only 5 weeks tomorrow. So it's not very far along. But I decided I'm going to share it this time because I'd rather have the prayers of people and the emotional support if something does happen. But it caused me to fear. Like the whole time I was pregnant with Julia, first it was, once I see this, I got the first pregnancy test and I was like, once the doctor calls and says that I actually am pregnant, then I'll know I'm actually pregnant. And she called and I was like, they're going to call in a couple days and then I'll know whether it's a viable pregnancy because they called in a couple days and it was viable pregnancy. And I was like, I'll feel excited when I actually see the babies. And then at 5.5 weeks, I started bleeding. And so I thought I was losing the baby and got to see the baby. Very strong, very healthy heartbeat. And then I was like, once I get out of the first trimester, then I'm like, once I get to 24 weeks, because then it's the baby can survive outside the womb. And even when I held her, I never got excited and peaceful of this baby's here to stay. And even now, as she's a toddler, she's 2 years old, playing with Play-Doh over there. You probably can hear her occasionally. I have this pending fear that, God's going to decide it's her time to go. And my friend Ruth said something to me that was very striking. And she said, with this one, she goes, what would it hurt for you to be excited? What would it hurt for you to be happy? Would it be any worse if you were excited about it and lost the baby, or if you were fearful and lost the baby? And I've had losses where I was excited, and I've also had losses where I was very concerned that it wasn't, and the pain's the same. And I realized that by worrying and stuff, I'm stealing my own joy. I could have enjoyed the time that I did have. So I've decided this time I'm going to be joyful about this baby, or babies. That we implanted 2 embryos. I'll have to show you guys the little embryos. It's really amazing. You can see each little cell. It's amazing what a very, very, very new stage, or the beginning stage of a human is like. But So she also shared a verse with me that I've decided to memorize, and I keep telling myself, whether it has to do with my husband's businesses, whether it has to do with my daughter, whether my oldest daughter or my youngest daughter, or my pregnancy or my husband or anything. Because I have a tendency to worry. And I used to try to remind myself of that verse that says, do not worry about today, or do not worry about tomorrow, for today has enough something of its own. And just to tell myself not to worry, I can't do that. But the verse, 2 Timothy 7:1, he has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and self-control. And I realize that it's not worry that I struggle with, it's fear, because the fear precedes the worry. It's not, worry is not my problem, fear is. And I'm so afraid. I'm afraid that, my oldest daughter will make choices that will affect the rest of her life, and chances are she will. And it's going to be okay. I've made choices that have affected the rest of my life, and it's okay. And I'm afraid, God is going to take someone I love before I'm ready for them to go, which he will, and it will be okay. And I'm afraid that, I might miscarry this baby, and who knows, I don't know what God has planned for me or what this baby, but it's not the end of the world. And I am so blessed. I have 2 beautiful daughters. We own a beautiful house. We're going to be building a new house. We're in the process of selling this one. And I have so many blessings, and I just need to remind myself, not to fear. And so I made a commitment, and I've talked to my daughter, and I've talked to my husband, that when they catch me worrying, to remind me that God has not given me a spirit of fear, but of love, of power, and of self-control. And I'm going to use that self-control to help me stop worrying and remind myself that when I'm the happiest, I am loving others. I'm loving others above myself. And he has given us power. And oftentimes I feel like I am weak because I have weaknesses. Today actually is supposed to be Mental Health Day, I guess. And I suffer from depression on occasion, and have over the past couple months. And I know people don't like to think of it as a weakness because they're like, we're not weak. And that's true, we're not weak, but it is a weakness. Just like my ulcerative colitis is a weakness, just like my arthritis is a weakness, just like my asthma is a weakness. But it is through those weaknesses that I have found strength. I know somewhere in Isaiah it says something about he will give strength to the weary, and he will give power to the weak. I think that's how it goes. I should have memorized the reference, but I know it's in Isaiah, and I like that verse. And we do have weaknesses. Superman had a weakness, and that doesn't mean that he was weak. He was the strongest man ever, if he were to be real. Nobody would ever say Superman is weak, but he had a weakness. And all of us have weaknesses, whether it's depression, whether it's mental illness, whether it's a disease, whether it's sin that we just cannot get a hold of. But that doesn't make us a weak person. In fact, it is through those weaknesses that God gives us power and gives us strength. And we can only find that through him. So anyway, I just wanted to share with you some of my real struggle right now. If you think about it, please pray for this baby or babies. We'll have an ultrasound in not next Tuesday, but the Tuesday after, and we'll see what God has planned for us. So just please pray for us, and I hope that you find comfort in that verse just as I have.